super duper. So hopefully you guys all have this cool reference that I was able to find online. And you know, ideally we should be using our own references. Well, but since this is just a class, we can just use references from everywhere, and there's plenty beautiful photos. So what I like about this is the lighting. Look how interesting this lighting is. And guys, please feel free to interrupt, ask questions. Let me know if the picture is not quite clear, because I had some bandwidth issue yesterday, but hopefully this is all looking good. So I love the lighting. It's very unusual. It comes from, I think, above and behind, like really behind, but up top. It's very strange. I love it, of course. It's very unusual. So her shoulders are lit, the nose, the top of her head, and part of this cheekbone. So let's start drawing it quickly. There is a tilt, so always be aware, you know, heads, most of the time actually they're not straight. There's always the center line is somehow tilted, and it does follow the neck, right? So we always have to be aware of this. And just first thing first, we can always position it here. And if it's too faded, if my lines are too light, I'll use the other pencil. And again, the basic shape. So the bottom of the chin, I just established the bottom of the chin. Okay, so she has a long neck, so I want to make sure that I have enough space here for that neck. And part of the shoulders, I like that. So we will have the bottom of that chin, top of the hair somewhere there. I just have to see if anybody is joining us. And her head is a bit round. If you see the width, like it's not too long. If we measure the width between the cheekbones, which is usually the widest part, I'm just measuring it roughly, and then placing it. See, it goes all the way up to the middle of her forehead. So very roughly an oval, and the center line should be cutting the both sides. It should be creating the symmetry. And because she's really looking straight, there's no three-quarter view, it's very much straight on. So here just very roughly indicating that cheekbone, which is at a very sharp angle. See how it is at an angle. And again, the three parts, top of the eyebrows. Okay, so here roughly, and things will change probably, but top of eyebrows, bottom of the nose. I'm looking at the distances. Top of that hairline here, the nose, it's pretty much the same, slightly shorter nose than this. So that's pretty much it. This part here is the hairline. It's really pointy. Always pay attention to these very important features. So it goes very pointy. If you guys drew it ahead of time, that's wonderful. I'm just gonna very quickly start drawing this. So again, the shape of the nose, you kind of draw a little triangle to see the shape and how wide it is. These of course helping lines that will go eventually. So here I'm putting a slight indication of where these nostrils are going to be. The corners of the eyes, as always, her eyes are kind of wide set, they're not too close together. When you draw a vertical again from that nostril up, it's almost at the end of that nostril. So this is the distance between the two eyes. There is quite a bit of a distance between the eyebrows and the eyes. And she had that dreamy look, slightly squinted eyes, feline-like, you know, young person, pretty face, beautiful. Everything is looking good. So here we go. A little bit more space, thicker eyebrows, and definitely, you know, pay attention to the space between the eyebrows. Again, here is upper eyelid, everything. So we follow that tilt. So if the center line is going this way, The eyes will be aligning perpendicularly, so I'm just putting this, you know, perpendicular line. That applies the same with any other kinds of lines that are going across. So here we go. Now the distance between the nose and the mouth, we measured that. Her mouth is slightly open. So here is that line that's very important. That's very important, kind of gives that character of a face. And a thicker bottom lip. So we just look at the thickness of each feature, slightly thicker, and a really pointy, this is very interesting, a very pointy chin and a very steep angle here for the jawline. And there is a huge space, not huge, but relatively, like measure this space, look at that space between the end of that eye and the hairline. So it's right there. There is the cheekbone, very high cheekbone structure. And here again, the same distance. So things should be looking. Oh, I just want to make sure nobody's in the waiting room. I just forget to look sometimes. Okay, so here's the cheekbone and that jawline. And again, always put the ears, top of the eyebrows right here. Here's the bottom, where the bottom of the nose is. That's going to be the end of that ear, and the other side too. So we're just going immediately on the other side, and we see some part of that ear. My photo is very fuzzy because of my printer, but that's great. I like that because I don't see too much detail. I don't get distracted by too much detail. So that pointy hairline, and here is just some hair flying all over. Make sure that you give enough space here for the hair. Measure all these distances. Her eyes are going to be here, just very roughly. And the nostrils, did I forget? Okay, so here we have the nostril here and there, a little bit wider and shorter nose. I don't know how I did it, but okay, so here's going to be, there's this light here. You can just slightly sketch it there so you know to leave that white, and here at the bottom, so just kind of a shape of a triangle there. And now that long neck, and it's relatively short, narrow. You know, most necks that we've been painting so far, they kind of continue from that jaw line angle right here around the angle, but in her case it just goes in a little bit, so it is short and it follows the center line. So it follows the tilt, it follows the center line. It is quite long, and here, because the torso is turned, so her face is tilted looking straight, but the body is turned different way. Here is this where those collarbones meet, the two collarbones. That's an important point in the human body. And again, the shoulders. So there's the deltoid, there is a muscle. The deltoid starts from over here and it goes down, and maybe I made her neck actually thicker than it should have been. Yeah, let's move it down a bit. Yeah, she has a very thin refined feature here, and that is that deltoid. So I'm just slightly fixing this, and here that deltoid obviously continues on the other side but lower, so always be aware of all these muscles. And we continue down, right? So we see just part of it. Okay, so here is that collarbone that goes obviously somewhere there. So there's anatomy going on here, very important. And that's about it. So we just pay attention also to this line. As I mentioned, I want to just see exactly how these corners are, and paying attention to how they are. Are they up, down? As we mentioned, that changes the whole expression of the face, how it looks. So here we go. And now I'm just erasing my helping lines. This is that central line here that we have. I'm just erasing it slightly because we don't need it. And again, checking everything, making sure that, yeah, she definitely has high cheekbones here. Very okay. So we are ready to paint, guys, and I'm sure you're also ready to paint. That's my tea. And we always start super fast, real quick. And we're going to begin with the background, because I see this darker background. I really love it, and I love the contrast of that background and the light here of the hair and the shoulders. So we'll pay attention to this as we paint. I did throw my eraser somewhere. I just wanted to erase a little bit of all this pencil work, but that's okay. So we're good to start. Now I'm gonna put my reference right there. So what the colors I mentioned, we started with a bunch of colors here on my palette. If you guys don't have the same colors, that's perfectly fine, as long as they're close enough. So I have indigo for the darks, also this neutral tint that I used last time. I really like it. Like when you mix it with anything, it does look really dark, so I like that. I have the quinacridone red, the Italian burnt sienna. We're gonna use this for mixing skin tones, and the cadmium yellow. These are for the skin tone. And I have a crimson lake for the shadows. I'll probably use that. Ultramarine blue. This is a permanent yellow orange. I thought I was running out of cadmium yellow, and I found this permanent yellow orange, which is a very warm yellow, basically almost orange. So I like that a lot. And a cobalt blue, again, to substitute ultramarine. If you don't have ultramarine, just use cobalt. And of course that white that we always throw around at the end. So all right, we are ready to start. Again, big brush, giant big flat. And we will start from the background. And
Lucy,
yeah,
how we're going to preserve the hair because it's very white on the right side when you do the background.
we are going to preserve. We're not gonna go inside that hair. And I know there are some hairs sticking out. It's your choice, guys. If you want to take a fine brush and kind of very quickly have some hairs flying out with a masking fluid, we can do that. So why not? Do you guys want to do that? Since we're just, you know, small class, we can do whatever we want. I can show you. Use a old brush, not your best brush that you spent $50 on. Definitely just take a small brush, and with some masking fluid you can just mask out some hairs, like a few hairs on the right side, if you don't want to go with the white later. That's also a possibility. Let me see where my masking fluid is, and I will mask out some things. I mean, hairs, whiskers are great for that. I don't know where my masking fluid is. Sorry, it just disappeared. Here I am. My masking fluid is not near. I don't know where it is, but it's fine. You guys go ahead. Oh, we have a student here. Hold on. Waiting. This is Amy. Okay. So yeah, just go ahead and you can mask out some hairs if you'd like. I'm gonna just leave this white. I will paint right next to it, and I'll add the hairs with white, with titanium. But let me know when you're ready, if you wanted to just get going and start it. I'm still looking. I think it was here, but now it's not here, so it just flew away. Hi, Amy.
Hello.
Sorry. Have you been waiting for some time?
Oh, I was gone to get my paper.
Oh, good. Yeah, we're just starting. So if you had your drawing already done, this is perfect timing.
All right.
Let me see where I put my stuff is flying. All right, so we're good. Are you guys ready? If you're ready, let me know. We're gonna start painting, and we're going to. Yes, we're ready. Okay, let's move this palette over here. So the big brush again, a big flat, and you don't have to use a flat, but I like this big flat. So I'm just watering my background. I'm leaving. Oh, obviously I'm leaving. I'm just putting water around that hair and that shoulder line here, and I'm just putting water basically. But don't be too worried. Oh, did I really go into the hair? Don't worry about it. Sometimes, you know, those nice smooth soft transitions are good. So let's mix a nice color for our background. It should be muted. It shouldn't be anything overwhelming. I'm going to use the indigo. I'm gonna get the indigo, and let's make it nice and dark with lots of water. Make a good puddle with lots of water. This is all recording, yeah. And keep it cool, so maybe a little bit of ultramarine just to add some color, because it could be quite neutral. So here I'm just gonna paint right around. Look how it's just flying right into the hair. That's perfectly fine, because we can always lift a bit. So I'm just adding in a fun movement, in a very fun way. Don't be too worried about smoothness and everything wonderfully, perfectly drawn. Here I'm having this almost wild brush strokes right here. And since this is going to be the shadow of the face, you can take the clean brush and clean water and sort of really soften these edges, because this is going to continue into the face at some point. So I don't want to have a very sharp edge, especially in the shadow. I can even continue with the background color sometimes, so we'll get to that. All right, so here now maybe a sharper edge where the light is, a little bit sharper, and I'm continuing with that same color. So again, here at this point we're thinking soft edges versus sharp edges, and some cool interesting brush strokes. And again, you can lift, drip, let things drip a little bit, and throw in some water if you want, a little spatter to create our little effects. That's how we get the mood. And again, with another brush, clean brush, I'm softening again that neck here, because that's going to go into the shadow. So I don't want this edge to be very, very sharp. We're going to now move to the other side, and again I'm using again this indigo, a little bit of ultramarine for color, and just go around that hairline. Move your brush in any directions. I know there's hair sticking out, so I'm just gonna leave sort of in a wild way this brush strokes going on, creating movement. We want to create some movement and energy. Look how big my puddles are. Make sure you use lots of paint, lots of water. And here my paper is already drying a little bit, so even dry brush technique is fine. I'd like to have a nice sharp edge on that shoulder, so I will be more careful when I paint around, and I'll leave it like that. So here we go, and here is that jawline. There's lots of light going on here, and yeah, you can have some, you know, little whites of the paper peeking through. You can maybe swipe some areas with your paper towel, especially here where the hair is. See, you can just swipe like that in the direction of the hair, because hair is soft. So even if you did the masking fluid, I know it does create these very harsh edges sometimes, but we can soften all of this and the single hairs by creating these nice wispy lifts that will be the hair, some flying hairs everywhere. So here too, and we can define a little bit later. So that gives a lot of character, a lot of movement, a lot of mood to everything. And maybe a little spatter, a little bit. We don't want to overdo it. If this color dries too light, you can, while it's still sort of wet, you can always add a little bit more dark, especially on the right side. And I tend to like to have different values on both sides of a portrait, where the shadow is here on the left. Maybe it should be slightly darker, so I'm just adding maybe a little bit more dark to increase the contrast, just a tad bit, not too much on the left side. I just added this, and we are ready now to move into the body and the face. So here I just want to, while we have this, if we can just soften this edge here of the shoulder. The top, yeah, maybe should stay sharp, but here the bottom part definitely should soften up a bit. Okay, so here we go. So now we're going to just wet the whole area here, face, neck, body, all with one big swipe with just one color, which will be the skin color. Here I got a lot of these guys, a little bit too much, so I'm just going to maybe swipe a bit. All right, so let's wet it with clean water. Leave white where the whole light is here on the very top. I'm not gonna wet anything. With the hair we can do some dry brush technique, and here definitely on top of the forehead I just wiped it because my water is not quite clean. So again, clean water, leave white where the highlights is going to be, that nose, a little bit on the cheekbone. Everything else should be all wet, like we're wetting it. That applies to the neck. Here.
Sorry, Lyudmila, you just sprayed in water? Or it's
Yeah, there's no color, just water, clean water. Yeah, so wet on wet, and the reason why is because it creates this nice smooth, very smooth blood transitions, and it blends better. So when we wet it, and now very quickly we will mix our skin tone. Let's mix the skin tone. I'm gonna take a different brush because the flat may be a little bit too flat, so we're going to mix, and the skin tone basically is going to be the shadow. So right away we're going to mix an Alla Prima shadow. I'm taking this, okay, now which one is this? This may be the quinacridone red, most likely it is, and I'm mixing it with burnt umber. Quinacridone red, why I'm using it is because it's a cool red, it's perfect for shadows, with burnt umber to tone it down a bit. Okay, quinacridone, burnt umber, and a little bit of indigo, and let's get some warm yellow, just a tad bit, so you get this mix of kind of a warmish burgundy tone, and it's quite thick, so it's not light at all. And I'm going everywhere, including the hair, with this color. Very wide, broad strokes. So here, this forehead, see, it's very dark because even though she's just in the shadow, this is what the tone is going to be for the shadow. I'm just going everywhere. Okay, let's get a little warmth so it's not too purple, it's not too red. So neither one of the colors that I just mentioned should be dominating. They should be all in equal parts, really. So I'm even dabbing a little bit on the ultramarine just to cool it a little bit. Maybe leave some highlight around the eye. I lost it, but that's okay. And we're going here definitely around the nose, so make sure that this whole color goes everywhere. And the shape may not be perfect, don't worry about this, just keep going. And I'm again mixing the same color, sienna, quinacridone. If you have crimson, alizarin crimson instead, that's perfectly fine. And I'm just slightly adding more yellow as I go down, because I think there is some sort of a reflection or a lighter, just slightly light area here on that bottom. We will get to that. So I'm just adding this everywhere and very quickly, so we don't end up having too much of sharp edges. We're leaving this area here light. Yeah, and maybe I should just get my big flat brush so we cover it quickly. I'm just also softening some of these edges on the forehead right away, because then they're starting to look a little bit too sharp. And here on the nose right away, I'm just gonna lift a little of that edge right here, because that was also getting a bit too sharp. So now I'm switching to my big flat, obviously. Burnt sienna, quinacridone, some of this yellow, and a little bit of ultramarine, and we will continue down. Now you can have a touch now of indigo, because obviously that's the background, and we did talk about the neck being always a little bit darker, a little bit more cooler. It's not as red as everything else, so I'm just moving it down. All right, so just slightly darker indigo again, quinacridone, and burnt sienna. And here I'm just adding a bit of that dark. And we have nice darker neck compared to everything else. And just big swipey motions, movements, we're getting this whole thing going. And now I'm just rinsing my brush a little bit. I'll get a smaller brush. Let's continue this shadow here. I must have missed that. So it should continue here, and it just goes down. Everything should still be wet and easy to work with. Just slightly softening this area here. I don't want it to be too sharp, and slightly lifting here on that cheekbone to soften it and define that shape a bit. So now everything else should get the skin color. Here her shoulders, so I'm getting this very warm yellow, a little bit of alizarin or quinacridone, whatever we have, so a little bit of yellow, this, and maybe some ultramarine to kind of tone it down. And this time more quinacridone, and a little bit of red too. So we're gonna have more water in this case, so it doesn't get too dark, and we're gonna quickly add this skin tone with more water. Okay, and let's wet it ahead of time. We can just wet it, and you can leave this light, like really this highlighted area here white. I'm trying to maybe soften a little bit that edge because it seems a bit too sharp. Some areas should be sharp, some should be soft. It shouldn't be like an endless line. So I'm just adding some water, warm yellow, quinacridone, warm red, just to get this warmish pinkish tone with a little bit of yellow, and we will continue with this skin tone. So instead of going with the skin tone everywhere like we did before, now we just painted immediately the shadow color, and then we added the skin tone on the light. And the reason why is because we have a lot of shadow, like that was basically the main tone everywhere. So here I'm just adding some brush strokes. And it's okay if you have some blotches here and there. Yeah, mine looks a bit blotchy, but it's okay. I mean, it's watercolor, it's gonna make it look more interesting. I'll soften this edge tad bit and add that skin tone that we just mixed a little bit on this plane. There is a plane here that's going up there, and same color should continue into the hair, obviously darker. So I'm gonna mix a bit of a indigo, quinacridone, burnt sienna. Let's make a nice puddle, more burnt sienna this time, and maybe indigo, and add this darker tone here for the hair. And hair could be obviously dry brushed, so I'm gonna add a couple of lines. Could be more of okay, so you probably can't see, so I'm just gonna slightly move this, add, because my paper is big. So here I'm just going to add a couple of brush strokes, and very sketchy. Goes this way. Continuing here, defining that cheekbone. Underneath there's shadow. And going into that ear. So here I'm just softening a little bit, just softening. And of course the ear, we already at the ear, so I'm gonna add some red. There's lots of red in that ear. Obviously the light is coming from behind, so orange or yellow with red, we pop it right there. I'm just adding it, and now that we have that red, hopefully everything is still wet. I'm just gonna add some red now on that nose, as always, here, like closer to that shadow, and maybe on this side. Everything is drying really fast here on my pictures. But it's okay, we're creating drama. Even if things start drying a bit blotchy, that's okay. It's just gonna make it even more dramatic, because we will add now even more dark. So that was almost like the main skin tone, and we will add more dark and go into the details. So we added some red here on the nose, and let's add some red a little on that other ear on the other side. Obviously it is in the shadow, but still it needs to have some more red on it. All right, so now let's take a look, and let's lift a little bit. There is a reflection here on the chin. This is a bone, the jawline right here. There it's a bit of a reflection, so I'm just slightly lifting. It shouldn't be white when you lift it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to add a bit of like orange or yellow there. I'm slightly lifting it. Now depends on the paper of what kind of marks it leaves when you do these things. Sometimes it may create a problem, but nothing is a problem really. I never see it as, oh, that's horrible, or it does create a sharp line. It is what it is. Actually a watercolor, so these are all the marks that they leave. So I'm slightly lifting this to show the reflection on that chin. And I'm going to add a little bit of color, just a tad bit. So we added that reflection there, and that same reflection will be at the bottom of the nose. So while things are kind of still wet, I'm just getting this warmish yellow, and let's put it under the bottom of that nose, that nostrils. There obviously are reflecting light. So similar things are happening here with the cheekbone, but we will build this with darker tones. We're just going to introduce some darker colors into this. And yeah, my paper is acting a bit strange, but that's okay. So let's let me just lift. So some areas could be lifted a little bit, and maybe a little bit on this side, that jawline too. Just, it should not look intentional. It should not look like it's a sharp line. It should be soft, because when you squint your eye, nothing is really just jumping. The whole face is pretty much all in the dark, and there's only jumps are the highlights. So we keep going, and now we're going to mix a very, very dark tone, and we will start adding the details in the face. Let me see here, something is not quite right. All right. So I'm mixing now a darker tone, again same alizarin crimson or whatever lake, crimson lake I had, and some dark, anything dark, indigo or this neutral tint. This is gonna be my darker, basically less water, more pigment, and the same thing with burnt sienna. So that will be nice and dark, and we're going to start building some of the features. So here we have thicker eyebrows. Make sure your edges are not sharp. So immediately with clean water, I'm going to soften these edges. They should not be outlined. Eyebrows are hair basically. So the same thing as the hairline in the head. Eyebrows, unless they're really penciled in or drawn with a brush or something, but even then it's better to leave them a slight more natural looking, more soft. So here we have another one, the other side, with that same color. And again, the moment we put it down, we start softening a little bit. Just a little bit. You can have some edges sharper, some not so sharp. And now, as we remember, always the area between the eyebrows and the eyes is always darker. Not all eyes are very much, are not too deep. Some are a little bit flatter, but still. And I'm noticing that actually the left side of her shadow of the face is slightly lighter. Obviously we can do that, so let's do a little bit darker here. So I'm adding more dark on this side, and we will be building it. So here's this upper eyelid with that same dark color that we use. Definitely below that eyelid there is also a darker line that casts a shadow on the actual eye. Eyes are pretty big and a little elongated, so kind of long and squinty. She's outdoors. You see that? Don't outline the bottom eyebrow, the bottom edge of that eye. Don't do that. We're just gonna continue down here on that nose, and now paint around that nostril. And now it's time to soften these edges. So I'm just running clean water here a little here, and I'm just softening some of these edges with just 2 brush strokes. Again, darker tone, mixing the same dark tone, burnt sienna, quinacridone, or alizarin. They're all they can intermix. Doesn't matter which one you use, as long as it's a cooler red. So with that same tone, I'm indicating here the nostrils very, very quickly. And that is, I mean, nostrils will get the darkest dark. Like when we did the little chart and we did number 5. That was going to be the nostril and the pupils, but in this case I'm just adding it with this tone and I'll darken them later. So we're continuing down here with a bit of dark. It is a very interesting lighting. There is some reflection from below, so all these normal principles that we always talked about, how the upper lip is usually darker than the bottom, in this case you can't really tell, they're all in the dark. So we're just going to use that same color and I will just darken them. Using pretty much the same color. Don't worry about teeth. Just slightly darken these lips. Now you can lift a little bit at the very bottom of that upper lip. That is that reflection that we talk about. That is actually at the bottom of the nose too. So these are just little subtle features that we see in what the lighting does. So I'm slightly lifting that, and we're continuing with this darker shade, like number 4, if you have to give it numbers. Burnt sienna warms our colors, and the face is never too cold. Like that doesn't have too many cool tones, just in some areas, but generally if it's outside doesn't have too many. So under the chin I'm just adding this and continuing it. Now hopefully your paper is not acting too weird, because it is a lot of paint going on that face, and we're just adding after it's dry a little bit, so it's okay if it does. It's just going to be a nice dramatic face. So I'm getting again the same, this dark tone, mixing it. If you run out of it, don't hesitate to mix some more, and I will move to the left side. Upper eyelid, that crevice, make sure you don't have too much water so nothing spills all over the map. Here we're going to put some more for the crevice. We are going to outline this edge right there, and here are the corners, our corners of the eye. And I will slightly darken this whole area with that same tone. I just want to edit, and now I'm seeing that this is, the right is not even dark enough, so I'm just adding even more dark here. Okay, so don't worry about the color of the eyes. I'm just putting it there. I know we can always add a little blue eventually. I'd like to just darken it so I know what's where. And you can slightly lift, usually in the eye, slightly lift a little bit because there's always a reflection going on. Soften these crevices right here, that upper eyelid. Let's soften it, and we can always add some more. Now let's grab some dark, and very gently, because it is a young face, not too much. Here I'm slightly adding some of this darker area under the eye. It shouldn't be too dark, but it is there, so I'm just adding it very lightly. All right, so don't be scared. I know it looks a bit like, oh, but the moment we start building it with very dark tones, this is all gonna look really actually muted. So nothing to worry about. I'm getting again darker tone, burnt sienna, crimson, a little bit of indigo, and we will continue. I need to define that nostril is not quite correct, so I'm just putting it there. And now that I have this dark color, that's actually, I'm going to use it maybe with some more indigo, darker tone. Let's add this hair here while we have it, and we can have these little strings flying all over. We'll add those a little later. I'm just giving some clue for now of what's going to be happening there. And my hair needs to be quite dark here, so I did mix a very dark tone. It's the neutral tint, or if you have indigo, that's great. And I put burnt sienna in it to warm it, and I just put some more here, so it's super dark. You can have even some dry brush technique and indicate maybe there's some hairs sticking out in that area. Okay, again, move your brush in any direction, every direction. Slightly darker here too. Just now adding these darks. It's always gonna be really, really dark. It's gonna end up looking super dark, just like it is over there. We are working with different light situations. So this edge here is very sharp. I'm just running clean water to soften it. It should not be sharp. Also this edge, I can just sharpen some of it. Not all, but some. And let's see. Now we can even add some more anatomy here on those shoulders. Again, mix the darker dark. And I'm gonna add a bit of dark on this side, a little under the chin, some more dark, and indicate there is this where the bones meet, the collarbones meet. So just adding some more dark right here, and where the bone continues, right there, and soften the edges. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, I just want it to be straighter here, just definitely darker, and maybe a little lift, a little bit here. See, there is that kind of more protruding part under the neck, but we don't want to go into too much. We need to simplify, so simpler is better. And sometimes, yeah, if I find myself going too much into too much detail, I just get the big brush. Now I just mix some alizarin, burnt sienna, some of the quinacridone, and I'm just doing big wide swipes here under the neck. That's it. That's going to be my neck. It's going to be nice and dark. Slightly soften this and maybe lighten some of that edge right here, so it's not too much of a cutout. All right, so here we're moving along. Now we have this really dark tone. Now we're gonna go into the 5, that 5 value that is darker, and we will start adding even more dark into the face. Before that, let's pop in some, I know, blue, like a ultramarine. Maybe we can just maybe show some eye color. So I'll just pop a little, like a little dot that will give some indication of a eye color, and just a little bit. I'll just usually put it on one side because there's so much reflection, so much shadow, that it will never be, yeah, just bright blue in the shadow. So now I'm getting a smaller brush and we're going to work with some more detail and really mix a nice dark. And I see my crevices here of the eyelids are getting all lost, so we will add them, adding indigo, this alizarin, let's just add it, and we go back and define them. So that's the bottom of that edge. Then is this again, this crevice right here. Here is this corner, and here we're going to put the pupil. And I know that there is a kind of an outline around, so here is when we are being a little bit more careful because we don't want to be too crazy, too sloppy. We just want to make sure that things are where they should be. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna have to take a look because my print is so light I just can't see much. So here, and I'm just adding a little bit dark in the beginning of that eyebrow because it does seem a bit darker. So I'm adding a lot darker on the very top, I mean on that upper edge of the eyelid. And now soften again, just soften just that bit, and soften this area here near the corner of the eye. I'm lifting a little bit inside the eye. I lost a bit of that color, but you can always edit and just lift some areas as we mentioned. So everything should be in the shadow. We are basically working in the shadow. Everything is very dark, very much in the shadow. Let's get some more crimson with the dark and some burnt sienna, and we'll go back here into the eyebrow on the right side. I'm even using my fingers sometimes to soften things because they shouldn't be looking too sharp. Now this edge is casting a really dark shadow. That's where usually the eyelashes are. So I'm making it a bit darker. And again, going over that crevice right there. And darken it. Yeah, I'm using the same color, just the same tone, to just darken it a little bit. Here is that edge. There is some sort of an outline on her eye. It's an interesting line there. And just cleaning my brush and just adding some more to soften some of these guys. And lifting some things in the eye. Now there's a lot of things going on usually in the corner of an eye, and I always tap a little red just to liven it up. If it just flies all over, that's fine. That's how it is. Things just fly. Now when the eyes dry, I will add even darker for the pupils, and that's gonna make them pop a lot. So we're doing good. So now this interesting highlight here is a bit too harsh, and it's like very much outlined. I will soften some of this edge. I'll just mix a nice warm yellow with some red, like a nice skin tone-ish color, and like add a little bit of tone, like warmer tone. That's where the light is. And here, because it was just too dark, too harsh, and I will again soften the edges. And you may even continue it on the nose too if you'd like. Depends on your paper. Now we don't want to make too many passes again and again, too many layers on that face, because it will start looking blotchy, and mine is already starting to look a bit blotchy, but yeah, that's all right. Here we get some red. I'm just adding some more red here at the bottom of those nostrils. Let's add this nice reflection that we have there with just red and yellow. I'm just mixing red and yellow. I'm even adding some more here, softening some of these blotchy areas here. So adding this warm tone does contribute to the sense of light a little bit, and it's not all brown, dark purple. That absolutely adds some more to the light. And we'll do this here for the upper part of her high forehead. I'm just getting this nice warm yellow, a little bit of red, and add just a little warmth. Just a little warmth right there. That is that plane here that is transitioning towards the shadow. Again, the same will go for her cheekbone, so make sure it's not too yellow, but maybe more something in between. So I'm just gonna add a little bit here, maybe on that plane that turns. It's gonna be slightly warmer, and it connects to that reflection on that chin. So see, even if everything is all dry, you can still work, you can still add color. How to solve a blotchy situation like I have over here. Usually what I do is I take my big brush, and I'm gonna take the flat because I'm not very excited about what's happening here with all these, like, too many blotchiness. I want to make it flatter and more unified. So I'll take red, a little bit of red, not too much water, but just medium, and maybe some crimson, a little bit of red, and I will just do a bit of a big swipe everywhere to unify this whole situation that I created. And my paper is obviously not the best, but that's okay. We're just making it more unified. So one big swipe to just make it a little more soft. And here, that same color, and it's slightly redder, and we're not gonna do too many tap on it because that's gonna continue with the blotchiness. So see, we just one big swipe, we solved that situation. A little softening here, softening there. I'm just grabbing a bit here, some color for that lip. And I lost some of that dark side of the nose, so I'm just adding it, and that's it. I'm not gonna do this. I'll just one big brush strokes here just to continue this plane, and I'm leaving it as is because we don't want to create too much of a too many colors, too many layers. Now I will take a nice dark color, and we're going to work on those lips here and this line to define them a little bit more. So burnt sienna, some indigo, burnt sienna, indigo, really dark. It should be very dark value, and slightly darken this. Don't worry too much about teeth. I don't worry. Definitely just outline it just a little bit, not too much. And we're going down here into that corner. So that's definitely going to give an expression on the face, if she's smiling or not. And here's some more in the corner. I need to be aware at 12 o'clock. Oh, we have plenty of time. We have 30 more minutes. So all this edges, the corners, make sure it's not too sharp. If things start flying away, don't worry. It is it's a face that's in the shadow, and there's lots going on, lots of colors, lots of stuff. So even if you got the blotchiness a little bit, don't worry too much. So here I'm going to add some tone to the bottom lip, a little red. I mean, just a little bit. We don't want to paint lipsticks and stuff like that. So just have some warmer tone on those lip, on that lip right here to define it. And as always, like every time you feel stuck, squint your eyes, look at the reference, and that's what you see. If that's what you see, then squint the eyes on your painting, and whatever you see, that's it. So make sure your values are correct. Just adding a little bit of this color. Slightly warmer here on that plane, like this is a plane that is closer to us. So I'm just adding a little bit of warmth right there on that nose. I just went back to that nose. The nose was not something was not right. So I just added a little bit of this warm tone that you see here reflecting. And I can even pop some red again to just liven it up a bit, because with that dark on the other side, it's becoming nice, dark, and dramatic for sure. So it's not your usual face because of that whole lighting. So again, with the dark, let's look at now these ears. Quinacridone and some indigo, and I'm going to add a bit of dark right here, a little bit. There is anatomy here going on, going up a dot. Don't worry, the one on the left, that can go. And now we can have fun with our little brush. Before the little brush, let's put very black, like get black and put those pupils in. Make sure they're nice and big, not too small. Just pop them right in here. Very dark. That's gonna liven up your eyes. So put the dark pupil in. A little bit more dark right there. Okay, here stuff is floating around. Yeah, it's it happens. I'm just, yes, you get all these weird blotches that should not be happening. So you can always go back and, you know, add some darks later and just redefine if you have the same situation. Everybody has a different situation. So I'm going to get my rigger brush and start adding crazy hairlines with a dark tone first, and then we can switch to some white. But let's get this indigo tone, burnt sienna, and I'd like to add now right here and on top of her face. Take a very thin rigger if you have, because these should not be thick. Be very careful when you paint on top of faces. You should not have thick blotchy lines, just very wispy. Now you see it, now you don't, and you can like do it very lightly, like start, stop, maybe extend some. And don't worry if it's not perfect or it's in not the right location. These are all suggestions that obviously the hair is flying in places. So have some, a little on one side, a little bit is gonna go on the other side. On the other side here is lighter, so I'm just adding some more brown. Just very wispy, very refined, nothing too harsh. I'm taking the bigger brush here just to add some, again, some of this nice warm tone where the light is hitting in the hair. I'm just gonna make a couple of dry brush strokes because that needs to be warm right here and not all white. So whatever the light is, we have some yellow, some white. And here we're gonna add some more warmth on the very top. So that's definitely, the yellow does add light to this whole painting. So a little bit of yellow, a little bit of red, so it's not super duper yellow. Maybe there is a highlight here. I'm just adding it, dapping it. Here, dab, and that same color can continue a little on the shoulder. So I have red, a little bit of yellow, red, yellow. These are all the highlights, and we can continue a little bit here. So these are all just highlights of light. Maybe reflecting a little bit below. So continuing, I'll leave this quiet. I'm not gonna add yellow there too. Just keep it focused more on the face. Maybe a couple of, oh, it's flying all over. A couple of red, maybe little reddish lines as a accent. Now we can put a little bit of a highlight in those eyes. So what I'm going to do is I'll take my titanium white too, or if you have it on a cake, that's fine, but it shouldn't be too bright white. Like, I'm diluted with a bit of water, and that way it's going to dry grayer. It should not be stark white because it's in the shadow. So I'm just gonna pop a little highlight slightly on that iris area and make sure it's on the same location on both eyes. So just adding some highlights a little bit. And now that we're in the white, I just put a little dash right here on that. There is a corner on that upper lip, not corner, it's an edge. It's a lighter edge right there. I just put a little dot right there. There's little finishing touches of a face when we just dab a little to kind of accentuate some areas. So, and if you lost some of the highlights, we just dab it. Now there is an interesting, gosh, my photo is so not great. There's an interesting cast shadow that the hair is casting on that forehead. You can mix a light, very light, almost, I'll just say yellow, because it's in the light, it's a cast shadow in the light, it will be light. So I'm just putting some alizarin, some yellow, and you can put a few lines. These are the cast shadow of hairs. You can do that. And again, soften some parts with clean water, but very subtle again. And again, with the rigger, we can add now some brighter wispy hairs here. Instead of white, I'm just going to use this yellow. So the finishing touches are gonna make a big difference, guys. So definitely refine. I have this lemon yellow, I mentioned it to you, did I? From PWC set that is so opaque. You don't even have to use white. Sometimes this yellow does amazing work, and you can do crazy wisps with that yellow. I'm just adding very refined, very light, very refined, and it can go out. Now if it goes too much into the yellow universe, we're gonna take the titanium and just go crazy here with some lines. Keep them refined. So we have rough, refined. Remember the opposites? Rough, refined, big, small, larger area, quiet area, crazy area. So we need to have variety in our paintings. That's what grabs the attention. Nothing should look the same everywhere. You can have smooth as some areas should be rougher, dry brushed, sketchy. So I'm just dipping into this titanium and adding some more of this wispy hairs. If you are not too happy with some of those, you can always add some water and soften them. If they look too intentional, too outlined, too not how they should be, you know, should look very organic, as if untouched by, obviously it's not painted by a human hand, as if it's just created by itself. That's the goal. All right, so here we have some more wispies, hairs going crazy, and you can go absolutely wild if you want, but yeah, why not? I mean, there's wind and light. It does add some excitement, definitely, to the painting. Lines, that is. So little lines. And I'm adding some more on the shadow, more this side. And even a little spatter if you'd like. Sometimes it just creates even more excitement. Just a little bit, don't overdo it on the face. There's definitely stuff going on here, and it is following the light part of the hair. So where this plane is, see the light is hitting right there, so these hairs will be light. Now my brush is not very refined, and every time you find yourself putting thicker lines, just water them down, soften them. I'm just putting just random lines following roughly the direction of how this hair is, and just soften some of these. Now we're not going to overdo the white, remember, just adding it as highlight, just as a highlight, little hairs. Now when you guys submit for certain watercolor societies, if you want to submit work to, let's say, the transparent watercolor society, never use white, never ever ever. You just have to always mask it out. But for all others, yeah, no worries. But they're really strict about the use of white for whatever reason. They're purists, or that's what I think. I don't think white is there for a reason, and the reason is really adding highlights. So just a couple of lines, a little bit of dots. Those lines are not really beginning to the end. They're just stop, start, stop, start, stop. Even a few dots here and there. That's how you see those hairs. Just dots. Don't try to smooth out. If you see blotches too much here, like I'm seeing a bunch of blotches in my areas, don't touch them anymore. Whatever white big swipe I did, that's it. And because if you keep going back again and again and again, it's just gonna really eventually destroy the paper. It doesn't have to be smooth. Nothing has to be really smooth. It is a painting. It's not a photo. We're not trying to replicate what we see. So what I'm doing right now, I'm putting some bright tone here on that ear. Obviously it is hit by the light, so I'm just adding some highlight on that ear right here. A very bright light right there. And the background, maybe that ear is too low, so I'm just kind of fixing some of my drawings here. My drawing, we don't want that ear to be hanging down to her mouth. So, and soften. Everything is just softened, so you're not emphasizing too much. So let's see how our work is going. You guys feel free to show me what you have. Oh wow, we have almost like 10 minutes, but of course we can stay a little later if you want. You're free to ask me questions and show me what you have. If you lost some of highlights, see, I'm just putting little blotches of bright color here just to emphasize that light, because that light is making a big difference. Just a nice bright color. And we're leaving some area white, but some can have some of this color. Just some really finishing touches of bright tones here and there. A little highlight there. And a little highlight here. So we start, there is a dynamic, it's a whole rhythm of how we start painting. Like we start wild, then we go a little bit more into defining and more refined, and then we finish wild. You have to finish your painting with, you know, wild strokes, and that's it. That's how you keep the freshness of your painting, and don't overwork it. Okay, so
It's not simple.
feel free to show me what you guys have. If I had a different paper, probably that would have ended up looking a bit smoother, but I'm okay with having spots here and there. And if you get too many of these, as I said, just take your big brush, mix a nice color with lots of water, and just go whoops just once, and that's immediately is going to soften everything and unify it in a way. So that's very, very important to remember. It's kind of to revive or bring something to more smoother form. So here there's a light there, a light there. And as I mentioned, I was going to go back to that mouth here, that corner that I missed. So now everything is dry. I'm just back and slightly defining it with just more shadow there. So guys, feel free to show me what you have. Let's see, and let's talk about it. Amy's observing today. She's not painting. I'm just adding a little bit of color here. A little dot. So just adding a little accent here, especially where the light is hitting. I need to add some of this accent color to soften a bit these white, very stark white areas. So I'm just adding some of this warm yellow. So these are just tiny itty bitty areas that we fix. I know that there is a ridge here under her nose. I'm very careful, you know, adding these tiny itty bitty details of the anatomy, especially since it's all dark. It may make it maybe too much. So also I'm darkening the white area of the eyes too. This one was a little too much sticking out, too light. Eyes should be dark. Like squint, all I see is a little bit of highlight. That's all I see. Maybe add a bit of highlight in the white area, just a tiny dot. But generally those eyes are all in the dark. When I squint my eyes, it's all in the dark. Even this should be probably darker under the eyebrow, any area under the eyebrow. And again, every painting is very different. I don't know what situation you guys have. I'll be happy to take a look. I'll be happy to take a look and we can talk about it and discuss it. It was not an easy subject. It was not an easy subject for sure. So I'm just gonna darken slightly more, adding this. And now that I darkened it, now I have to really darken even that crevice a little bit more. So I'm going maybe into the universe of overworking it. Yep. And I will stop right here. That's it. And you guys feel free to show me and we'll talk and give suggestions of stuff. As long as we have a quiet area, like I purposefully left this shoulder on the right quiet and just one layer, very light. It has some tones on it, but I did not use any layers on it. I want it to be a quiet area because there's lots going on. It's pretty intense, this whole shadow, so we don't paint everything we see. Rule number, I don't know, 100. We paint only some things. What's important, what's going to help our painting. Some more wispy hairs. Some more wispy hairs on this side. Ready to show? If not, don't worry, take your time. If you want to lift some of highlights, if you lost some of the highlights, just a little water. Now I'm going to just lift it to kind of follow this shape a little bit more. It was abruptly stopped for not following quite how the nose is. The nose has a bit of a fat area here on the top, so I'm just lifting a little bit there, and maybe a little bit at the bottom here where there is, I think, a reflection. So just minimal touch-ups. So see, my paper is buckling up a bit. And what I usually do, oh, you haven't been seeing the top. So what I usually do is I take it at an edge of my table, or like something that's really a straight edge, and I just run it on the opposite side. And it definitely, it really straightens it. Kind of diagonally, I just do this, and it does straighten it. And when it dries, it will straighten anyway, so. I don't know why my camera is kind of making it look very dark. It's not as dark in real life. In real life, so hopefully yours didn't come out as dark, but it is a dark subject, so I like to add more drama. So if something is dark, don't hesitate to use dark tones. It does add excitement and contrast, maybe a couple of spatters that went all over the map. Lifting some light just softly here behind the ear. Lifting a little bit above her eyebrows. So these are just minimal here. I'm just going a bit fussy with this, but yeah, there is some specifics sometimes that you can go into. Just lift a little bit, and you can work a lot with the light side. Shadow should stay one pass, that's it. And minimally, I mean, generally maybe two layers, and that's it. So here I'm just lifting a little bit here, just to soften some of that light. I know that's not quite the shape of her cheekbone. It should have been higher, but I'm not gonna go now a second layer, third layer, because it's just going to be too much. We'll keep it as is. Some definition on those nostrils with dark, very dark, even black, a little bit. So don't worry, this has all been recorded, and I will post it, guys, on YouTube. Sorry, sometimes I'm kind of slow with posting because of traveling and software and the little apps that I'm using, but it will get there for sure soon. I'm just adding sometimes dark here around the eyes. Definitely those edges and those crevices, they need to be accentuated. And keep painting, share your work with me all the time. I'll be happy to see what's going on. I was very impressed with what you've been doing. The Morgan Freeman, that was unbelievable from what I saw. You guys did fabulous, incredible work. No fear, that's the whole goal. These are all the rules. No fear, be very bold, start bold, go into more detail and finish bold. So these are the rules. Don't forget to sign your paintings. Always sign your paintings. Bottom right, bottom left, whichever area you want, where there's not much going on.
Lucy,
Yes.
I was too busy painting when you did the little spot on her nose, the highlight on her nose.
Yeah.
Did you end up putting color on that?
Yes, I basically grabbed some bright yellow and some orange, and I have this really cool, wonderful yellow that is very warm, so I just popped it there. It does make a big difference, and maybe some red too for the light. So I also pop that same color on all these light areas, especially when there is a transition or reflection. It makes a big difference. See, this approach is a little different. We didn't paint the main skin tone. The main skin tone was the shadow, basically. That's how we approached it. And we just use highlights for the light, because there's not much light other than here, the shoulders. That's the only area where we could do the main skin tone. I would recommend, like, if you haven't done it, just pop in some brights right where the light is.